You ever find yourself laying in bed late at night trying to catch some sleep but can't because your mind keeps reminding you that you're in your mid-20s and that you still haven't accomplished anything?
So to cope,
Your brain sends you random bursts of creativity to distract you from the fact that while your friends are off getting married and paying off their mortgages,
you're living
paycheck to paycheck because you spend your money on things like camera lenses and lightsabers.
Well, that's what happened to me. I recently got a random urge to try out animating. And if you're anything like me and you love anime, I'm sure you've entertained the thought of trying it out yourself. I mean, it doesn't seem like it's too much of a task. I mean, we've all drawn as kids. Like, how hard could it be? Overwhelmed by my new and frankly impulsive ambitions, I didn't know where to begin. So I began by going to the one place everyone goes to learn this type of shit. That's right, YouTube. I mean, I had to learn the basics. The first thing I needed to learn was how to draw a character. Once I got the idea and felt comfortable, I then had to learn how to draw them from different angles and under different lighting conditions. And after learning the ins and outs of character design and the importance of lighting and shadows, I began to feel that it was time for me to begin learning animation.
I'm just kidding, I didn't do any of that.
What I did do was watch like 2 or 3 drawing tutorials and decided from there to go straight to animating because it's 1 AM and I want to make something like Akira before the sun comes up. After watching the tutorials, and I'll link them down below, my main takeaway was I don't have any of the equipment they're using, but I have a MacBook, a hand, and that's all I need. The next thing I needed was something to animate on, but seeing as I'm broke as f***, I'm gonna have to use what I've already got. And the application that I'm gonna use to animate is Adobe Photoshop.
Yes! Yeah! Oh, better luck next time, buddy! Woo! Woo! Yeah, all right! Woo!
I always thought you used Photoshop for photo editing or other forms of design, but apparently it can also be used as an animating software. Who knew?
I did, that's why I'm using it.
After messing around with the settings and watching a tutorial here and there, I was finally ready to begin animating. The only problem was, I didn't know what to animate. But I knew I wanted a character, so I began by mapping out their head. Looking back on this, yeah, it's pretty rough. The lines are all out of proportion. I wouldn't even call that a circle. But I mean, I'm using a MacBook trackpad. I don't even have a mouse. My hand was cramping up since I had it stuck in place like Palpatine for hours. By the way, this isn't sped up. I just worked this fast. After completing the framework, I moved on to outlining the character, which is when I came up with the idea of animating a floating head, inspired by Japanese folklore from the Edo period, the yokai Nukakubi. The Nukakubi are monsters who have the ability to detach their head and fly around, often seeking blood from their victims. I just couldn't be bothered animating a full body. Compared to the framework, I wasn't ripping my hair out, and doing the outlines felt a lot easier, and honestly, it was pretty satisfying. It also kept me enthusiastic, since it allowed me to see the potential the animation had. Next, I moved on to adding the eyes and mouth. Originally, I wanted the character to have his mouth covered up like Zabuza and focus my attention on the eyes, but ultimately that plan fell through as I couldn't help but want to animate his mouth. It was around this time where I definitely started to feel just how long this would end up taking. Once I completed the facial features, it was time to move on to the first layer of coloring. It was a long process, but easier than drawing a face on every frame. After I colored him in, I decided to give him a nose, because everybody deserves a chance to sniff Amelia's chest. Oh man, I can't finish. Once the nose was installed, I then gave him eyebrows to better show his emotions. After coloring them in, I then returned back to his mouth to finish what I started. Next, I worked on his dreamy eyes. Originally, I didn't know what color to go with, but I ended up settling on an orange and red combination. After coloring his eyes, I then added a shadow line, and then once again, I went into his mouth to finish it off. Once I finished adding details to his ears, it was finally time to start the part that I enjoyed the most, which is the shadows. This was similar to when I was coloring his skin, however the challenge here was determining when and how the light was hitting him. Unfortunately, I never looked up the tutorial on how to do shadows, since at this point I was 10 hours in without any break, and I was definitely feeling it. But that didn't stop me from trying, and before I knew it, I had completed the floating head animation. With the head completed, I decided to add the kanji for the Nukakubi since I unironically liked that idea of him being one. However, I wanted the kanji to have a slight edge to it, so I wrote it multiple times in green and red to give it a certain look once the animation played. Once I finished with that, I then drew a background per frame, which would complete the animation, leaving me to render it and export it into Premiere Pro to edit and add sound, giving us the finished product. Listen, I know it has its flaws. The animation is jumpy, the character design changes, and the shadows aren't consistent. But I still think it turned out alright. Sure, it isn't on the same level as other works, but you know what? I'm proud of this 6-second clip. It kind of reminds me of something I would have seen on Cartoon Network as a kid during an ad break or something. All in all, this late night procrastination took 14 straight hours to complete. And now that it's completed and everything is done, I think I can now finally go to sleep.